Welcome to the Registry Insider. I'm Bill Seifarth, CEO and Executive Director for the National Registry of EMTs, and I'm the host of today's episode on the Registry Insider. Joining me today is Samantha Grimsley. She is the Texas State EMS Educator of the Year. So, Samantha, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So, obviously, first of all, congratulations on winning last year's award in the state as Educator of the Year. So, tell the listeners a little bit about your background and your story and how you got into EMS education.
Absolutely. So, I think like everybody else, we're all EMS providers here. So, right out of high school, I decided, let's go get a career in the field. Went into an EMT program, really not to be in EMS. I was going for more of the fire industry. And a coworker of mine ended up having a seizure. My adjunct instructor responded to the call, and it really just brought to light everything from start to finish on how EMS happens. And it really drove me home from there. I was like, I don't want to do fire anymore. I really want to be in EMS. So got my EMT certification. And unfortunately, where I lived, 18 years of age does not allow you to get on an ambulance. So I had to get creative. I had to kind of build my education. And I ended up working as a skills instructor for the college that I was attending. That really started my foundation into education. And I got to really put forth a lot of effort into how do we help the next generation of students that are coming through? What can I give them as somebody who's not even working in the field yet? What advice can I really tell them? So fast forward, become a paramedic in 2011. I've done everything from being on an ambulance, from IFT transfers to working in a county ambulance, to working at a fire station, working in a hospital setting, being in air medical, and then in educational settings. And so everything kind of just transpiredly brought me to the next step in my career. And in that, I got to really get to know education a lot more.
Good. So a pretty run-of-the-mill journey, I think, for a lot of EMS people. You kind of fall into EMS, and then you fall into the EMS education, and obviously you have a lot of background experience. You have a pretty diverse background too, so that makes it even better that you can apply it to the classroom, to the next generation. And is that do you feel that was probably the biggest motivation for you? Is like, how do I pay this forward to the next generation? How do I make sure that we have competent EMS clinicians in the future? Was that kind of the inclination that tugged at your heart to go into education?
I think it was that, but I also think it's the people who invested themselves in my education. Everybody has role models in their lives or some kind of mentor that really builds them up. In each stage, whether it was an EMT, paramedic, air medical, or even now, I think I always surrounded myself with really strong mentors that really pushed and drove me to making sure I made the best out of myself. And then I took those factors and tried to apply them to other people and make sure that I'm paying it forward to them. Now, the best part about being in this industry of having all these different career paths I've taken is I can share those with students and point them in the right direction of where they want to go with their career and give them those tools and resources as well.
Good. So as it relates to going into the education world, what's your key to success? Because obviously you're doing you have high pass rates. You're doing some amazing stuff in the state of Texas, so much so that they award you for Educator of the Year. What is the question is, what's the secret sauce, or what are your keys to success to being a good educator?
I think you have to have a passion for it, and you've got to know where your purpose is with it. Not everybody's meant to be an educator, just like not everybody's meant to be on an ambulance, right? So you have to know whether or not you are passionate about what you're doing, and you have to love what you do, obviously. If you love it, if you sell it, your students are going to feel it, and they're going to feel like they have that desire and passion as well. So it's going to come and it's going to replicate off. You have to be adaptable and innovative. You have to recognize that not every single cohort is going to act the exact same. Personalities are going to be different. People are going to learn slower or faster than one another. So you have to be able to adapt those curriculum changes as needed for each class. I think you have to have mentorship. You have to be willing to mentor them, not just in the classroom, but outside when they get further in their career and they're looking for more aspects and they need guidance. You're going to be a part of their life forever. In that, you're going to have to build some relationships too with cohorts, where you're going to have to build them with your clinical sites, your internship sites. You're going to have to make sure everything's taken care of. But then you're also going to have to build with educators, because other educators are going to help create your foundation of where you need to go. I'm surrounded by a lot of really good programs, And we all bring something to that table, but we all share some of the same dynamics and issues. And so we get to replicate that and share it. And then you've got to get involved professionally. So you can't just be stagnant, right? We all have to do continuing education, but you also have to figure out how to continue that education when you're in a classroom setting. And that is by going to some of these symposiums and conferences and then networking to figure out what's out there and be willing to change ourselves along that way. You can't just sit there and say, I've got the best, I'm going to stay this way. And then you've got to do a lot of assessment and reflection on yourself as well and be resilient. I mean, this is not an easy place to be in. And it takes a good-hearted person to realize what you got, because it's not like we went to school to be teachers. We went to school to be EMTs, paramedics, wherever we're at in this career. So we're learning just as much as anybody else.
Yeah, and that's a really very thorough, comprehensive list of I think, characteristics and attributes that are the keys to success. Most notable, I think you talked about, really lifelong learning is what you were saying for the mentorship. So it's not, your time as an educator is not limited to the classroom. It's as the now EMTs and paramedics themselves, clinicians, no longer students. They're always a student. We're always students there, because there's that lifelong learning journey that you talk about, the mentorship, the continuing education. I mean, just the adaptive nature or the evolution in EMS and the standards of care from 1 year to the next often change. So we've got to maintain that, and having that education mindset, I'm sure, is appreciated by your former students who are still running with you or in the field with you. So as it relates to your students, I mean, do you have any memorable stories or I call them success stories that potentially of a student that sticks out? You don't have to, of course, mention their mind, but any specific success stories where they may have gone on and become educators or advanced their career in other aspects of medicine. Any that come to mind?
I do. I actually mention him quite often, mainly because it's just one of those stories where you really get to watch them blossom and find themselves. So we've got a student, he went through EMT in like fall of 2023, and he just recently graduated as a paramedic student. Walked right on over, no experience in between. And I know that's normally somebody says that's a statistic, you shouldn't do that. But nonetheless, he had gone over to a university to really just go play football, wasn't really sure what he wanted to do with his life. He was in the middle of a bachelor's degree and just in the middle of it said, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I don't know what I want to do in life, but I don't want to do this. So fast forward, he's got a friend. His friend's mom is actually in a paramedic program of mine at that time, was watching, kind of seeing what she does in the industry. She's at a fire department and kind of was just trying to figure out what he wanted to do. So he and his best friend decided, let's enroll in an EMT program. And in it, when I first met him in his interview, I was like, this kid's got something. I don't know what it is, but he's got something. He doesn't know what he wants yet. And then as he's in EMT school, I had to tell him a couple of times, you got to grow up, you got to mature, this is about being an adult now. And as he finished that EMT program, you could start to see the light bulb was turning on. He was trying to figure out, where do I want to go in my career path? Do I want to go fire? Do I want to go EMS? What's my next step? So unfortunately, his friend decided he was going to take the fire route, but he stayed and went through the paramedic program right after that. And as the program kept going, you just kept seeing these light bulbs turn on. And it was like the conversation of just wanting to drive into that, like, why is this happening? Why am I doing this? That's the same thing that I do, right? I'm always about like, well, why are we doing this now? And so we would have these analytical conversations that would sometimes get to the point where I'm like, I have to go find that answer because I don't know how to answer that. And as time went on, you could just see this really strong provider coming on, and you could find his niche now. He knew what he wanted and he was finding it. So then he got hired right after a fire department. Now he's working as a firefighter, paramedic. He's about to go through fire academy there and come out of FTOs. And he's passionate and he loves it. And I hear good things about where he's at. And it makes me happy that he finally found that path in life.
So that's just one story of many, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Of students, now clinicians that you've accompanied on that journey and presumably still are accompanying. As we said, it's lifelong learning. So where do you see yourself, or what advice would you give other people who are contemplating to get into education? Kind of fringes on the first question I asked you about, what are the keys to success? But what advice would you give to people that are contemplating getting into EMS education? And the reason why I ask that question is often I hear of stories of educators who are quote unquote forced to go to the classroom because they have a knee injury, they have a back injury, they have a shoulder injury, and they can't run on the unit anymore. So they are detailed to be an educator. And they're not an educator. As you said, they're a paramedic. Just because they're a good paramedic doesn't mean they're going to be a necessarily good educator. So what advice would you give for someone or to someone that may be contemplating to actually become an educator or to explore it?
I think the first thing is, go sit in the classroom and see if it even interests you. Because if you're not interested in being there, you're not doing a justice to the person that you're going to be teaching, because they're not going to get anything out of it if you don't want to be there. We've all been with those people that are like, they're just reading this slide on the board, or they're just reading from the textbook, or you don't need to know that, and they're not doing a justice to patients anymore when they do that. If you can't be on the ambulance, then you put back in the students, and the students are going to be the patient advocates eventually, right, when they pass. So if that's not passionate to you, then you're not doing anybody justice. But if you are passionate, you think you want to do education, go volunteer at a program and see if that even strikes an interest for you. And if it does, okay, then apply and get into it. But you also have to be willing to take some educational courses, whether it's through the NREMT instructor course. Going to, for us, we have the Texas EMS Educators conference that's coming up, where you can jive with like-minded people and learn from them. You can go to your state conferences or the national conferences. And then you can also get involved with like NAEMT and NAMC's courses and kind of build off of that and meet like-minded people, and then start to kind of foundationally. And then if anything else, go back to school, go get your associates or your bachelor's, your master's, and make sure it's in something that's going to be relevant to what you want to do. And in the same time, one of the opportunities I had was actually sitting in on an ADAM panel for you guys and the standard setting. So apply for those opportunities and get to learn some of the other factors that tie into education and build upon it. And then most importantly, why do you want to be there? Remember the why behind it. Why did you want to get an EMS? Why do you want to educate people? What's your reasoning for it? And then be patient with yourself, because you may not be the perfect educator right off the bat. I mean, by no means was I, but through the process, you got to trust the process and remember things don't happen overnight. So, as long as you keep applying yourself and learning and growing, you're going to be fine.
Excellent. Really sound and sage advice. And particularly like the fact of, be introspective, be mindful of yourself and your motivations for doing it. Very similar to what we have to do when we actually decide to get an EMS, what's motivating us. And if we lose that motivation or that spark, whether it be in the classroom or whether it be in the back of an ambulance, then maybe it's time to consider something different.
Absolutely.
Well, I appreciate you, Samantha, for spending time with me today and talking a little bit about the keys to success for an EMS educator, especially in today's time, post-pandemic. It's a different place in the world than it was pre-pandemic. But congratulations to you for your award in Texas and for sharing your wisdom and insights today with our listeners.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for joining us. And as always, stay safe.
Thank you for joining us for this episode. If you wouldn't mind, please click the like and subscribe buttons, as well as the notifications so you can get notifications of upcoming episodes. Also, for the latest and greatest happenings of the National Registry, feel free to go to nremt.org. Thank you very much. And again, stay safe.